Gateway to Knowing. I never questioned the world in which I grew up. I followed the rhythms set for me by those around me, understanding the world and how to situate myself in it through the lens and lives of those in authority over me. I learned to orient myself to their whims and flights of fancy. I learned when it was necessary to shrink myself, to make myself disappear. In the small, rural North Carolina town of my youth, Blacks lived on one side of the tracks and whites on the other. The grocery stores, diners, convenience store, post office, schools, and gas stations were across the tracks on the white side of town. On our side of the tracks, only a small store my great-uncle owned, the Candy Lady's home, and 3 predominantly Black churches were easily accessible to us. Even in the late 70s and on into the early 80s, we stepped off the sidewalk when white people walked past, turning our gaze downward or to the side, never making direct eye contact. We paused our movement to let them enter establishments first, and on the rare occasion that we got to eat at Jones's, the local cafe, we called in our food order and then crossed the railroad tracks to the cafe's back door, where we gave our money to the one Black worker and retrieved our greasy hamburgers and hot dogs in a small paper sack. Nothing about this life seemed abnormal. This was our story. As a child, I existed in a world of play, family, and church. And then I went to school, where I interacted with white people for the first time. And with play being such an integral part of the world in which I grew up, it never dawned on me that asking my white classmates, "Can I come over to your house to play?" was taboo. I was 5. What did I know about situational ethics and contextual relationships? More than 4 decades have passed since I posed that question, but I'll never forget the replies of those twin sisters in my kindergarten class. One shook her head and said, "You're a secret. We can't play with you when we're not at school." "Why?" I asked in 5-year-old naivete. The other sister answered, "'Cause you're a and my grandma don't want us playing with." I shrugged off their comments, and we continued our play as if nothing cruel had transpired. Yet indelible ink wrote across the pages of my heart in crisp kindergarten crayon scribble, "There's something bad about me." I was special enough to play with at school, but not good enough to be invited into their home. That day, the measuring stick known as comparison etched with varying degrees of insignificance and unworthiness, formed in the recesses of my soul. And long into adulthood, I would constantly be measuring myself by how well I adapted and fit into whiteness. By the time that happened at school, I had more questions burrowing into my little 5-year-old brain than I knew what to do with. Why did people stop talking and stare at us with mean glares if we went through the front door at Jones's? Why did we have to go to the back door? Why did they only have one Black person working across town? Why was the dance studio in our town only for white girls? Why did we tame our joy and become quiet in the presence of white people? Why wouldn't the twins' grandmother let me play at their house? And why did that N word feel bad? Why? There were so many things that didn't make sense, but the tracks stilled my questions.